Hey YouTube, it's Kel. I hope that this video finds you well. I wanted to pop on with another podcast tonight and a follow-up to previous ones where we were talking about cognitive distortions, and a follow-up to, again, the first video that I did, which was the ABC video. So I've been saying each time that if you haven't seen that one, then go back and watch it for context of this one. But I wanted to follow up. We've done maybe, I think, like 6 maybe total cognitive distortions, and these are just a little psychoeducational tidbit for you guys. If you've ever heard of cognitive behavioral therapy, and specifically rational emotive behavior therapy that talks about ABC, and what that means is that there's an activating event in your external environment, and then you filter it through your belief system, and then it ends up leading to an emotional consequence. So your belief, the idea essentially is that your beliefs end up leading to your emotions, which end up leading to, all sorts of things, right? Like your behaviors, your motivation, all that kind of stuff. So, so I wanted to start tonight. So what we were talking about, again, there's the A step, which is the activating event. B is your belief, and C is the emotional consequence. So what we're talking about tonight are called cognitive distortions, and they take place at that B step. Okay, so, and the essence of cognitive behavioral therapy is basically the more irrational beliefs you have, that irrational at that B step, the more unhealthy and kind of not accurate your emotions are going to be, or possibly out of proportion with what's going on, not rational. And then the more irrational, or I forget what I just said, rational, the more irrational they are, the more like unhealthy your emotions will be. The more rational your beliefs are, the more healthy your emotions will be, or more accurate. So, and you can correct them. So like if you start to identify a certain irrational belief that you have, say you say things like, I'm an idiot all the time. And you can start to identify the beliefs that you have and how to correct them. Now, some people obviously mean that sarcastically, but some people actually mean that statement as fact. So that's just an example, but you can change your B step, the belief system. You can change it from irrational to more rational by focused effort to see how they're rational. And then a lot of times this is done working with a therapist, but you can do it by yourself. So let's just talk about the next one on the list. Is called emotional reasoning. And that is assuming that because we feel a certain way about something, that it must be true. So like if you feel ashamed, then it must mean that you are like a failure. So it's basically just because a lot of times our emotions can lie to us. And I think that's something a lot of people don't totally know or acknowledge, is that a lot of times, depression, for instance, is a huge liar. Anger is a huge liar. I mean, you can't believe them a lot of times to the extent that you feel them, but usually they're trying to tell you something. So, but if you just believe like, oh, I'm feeling ashamed, therefore I must be the worst human being on the planet, that would be an example of emotional reasoning and like a cognitive distortion that is not true, okay? So that is an example of that cognitive distortion. Another huge one that I see all the time are called shoulds and musts, okay? And this is a moralization at the step B level, where you take your own morality and you put it onto everyone else. Like, oh, they should be doing that. They must be doing that. And if they don't, like it gets you mad because you have placed your morality and code of values and ethics onto another, all the other human beings are in your belief system. They must believe exactly the way you do. And if not, then you're going to get like frustrated and feel, powerless or whatever. So the whole point is to, there's a saying that I love that I learned in graduate school, and it said, don't should all over yourself. And in case people missed it, that is SHOULD, should. Don't should all over yourself. And what that really means is that a lot of times we are so hard on ourselves and we're hard on other people because we're applying all of these kind of perfectionistic, moralistic shoulds, which again, I'm for having morals and values, and I don't think there's anything wrong with them. But when you put your own morals and values onto another person, it can create a lot of irrational and unhealthy feelings. And then also, if you should all over yourself too much and you point it towards you and you're constantly like living by, oh, I should have done that, I should have done that, I should have done that, I should do this, I should do that, I should do this, I should do that. It is a very perfectionistic kind of way to, believe, because you're believing that you should be perfect, right? And we all can, one of my favorite sayings ever is strive for the ideal, accept the real. So, it's one thing to strive for something. It's another thing to also accept that we are human and we're going to do imperfect things. And so I think kind of learning how to balance those two things. So if you hear yourself saying should all the time, it's something to look into. It could be a cognitive distortion, especially if you're placing that moralizing onto other people. So, and I do think there are some shoulds. To me, one of the biggest ones, obviously, is like love your neighbor as yourself, but that's a whole different topic. But I do think a lot of times we make the mistake of applying our own morality to the morality, like to other people, and saying that, oh, they should do this, they should do that, when it's really like, well, look, we need a little more live and let live, So, okay. The next cognitive distortion is called labeling, okay? And that is when you assign labels to yourselves or other people. So like when you say, they're such an idiot, or, just essentially name calling, right? Like labeling is name calling. And the reason why it's a cognitive distortion is because no one is that way all the time, right? Like we all might have not our brightest moments, we all might have, for lack of a better word, kind of stupid or like, oops, like I don't know what I was thinking in that moment, kind of moments, but stupidity or being an idiot doesn't define us as human beings, right? So like, I think, so labeling is a cognitive distortion because it's kind of like always or never. You're putting an always or never onto someone's personality. And when you do that, you're usually making a cognitive mistake or a rational reasoning mistake. So it's one thing to say you are acting like a blank. Now it's still not great. You don't want to name call, but like that's different than you are such a blank, So there's just differences there in terms of actual cognitive distortions or not. So, okay. And again, it's not really great to ever say you're acting like such a whatever blank either, but like, it's still a little bit more realistic when you're just trying to be rational, that we all have stupid moments, angry moments, whatever, sad moments, whatever you're quote, like calling or labeling the other person. It's one thing to say you're acting that way right now versus like, you are that way as a person, So, okay. So that was labeling. And the last one that I see all the time and have been guilty of it totally in the past, I try to be better about it now, but it's still I'm bad about it, is called personalization. So, when we have that activating event, the belief, and then the emotional consequence, it's basically like when you have an activating event in your environment, and then the belief is called personalization. So, it's essentially taking whatever happened out there and saying, oh, that happened because of me or towards me, or it's basically making it much more about you maybe than it actually is. So let's just say a partner didn't call, when they should have. Now, I'm not saying don't address it. I'm not saying, hey, you could say, hey, when you did that, it felt disrespectful, you were a little late or whatever. But personalization would be jumping to the conclusion that they did that because they don't like you, So it's different. Whereas that person could have been, I don't know, stuck in stuck in a bizarre scenario, you know what I mean? And it was not personal. Now, again, that's it. I would say if this is a pattern and someone doesn't call you when they should, I would not put up with disrespect, but because that doesn't even have to be personal, right? To be disrespectful. It can just be like, hey, it doesn't feel good to you. Someone has a pattern of disrespect. But if it's like a one-time thing and it's like, or someone comes home late to dinner without calling and you don't know if their phone lost battery. Again, I'm not making excuses for people, but what I'm for is communicating before you jump to the conclusion that it's about you. Okay, so and you should communicate if you felt disrespected or you felt like it was insulting or whatever, you should say that. But also maybe appropriate to ask the question like what was going on there, especially if it was not a pattern of disrespect, right? So if it was a one-time deal, people's batteries really do run out on their phone. I know I've had that happen myself, or I've been in areas where I really don't have service. And, so it's, again, not a pattern, but it just has happened, once in a blue moon. So I think it's good to ask the person to explain your feelings, ask the person what was going on, and see if it really was personal or not. And again, if there's a pattern there, then it's going to become personal no matter what, right? Because you're feeling disrespected. So, but if it, I think we're all allowed like some bad moments that have absolutely nothing to do with our partners or our friends or whatever. And as long as that's like clarified, I think it's wise not to jump to the conclusion. I think there's the book, I forget who wrote it, but the 4 truths or the 4 major truths or something like that. And one of them is, I will not take anything personally. And I love that because I really feel like we could all do a lot better at investigating and asking what was going on first before we jump to the conclusion that it was about us. So I'm just going to leave it there. That was the rest of our cognitive distortions list. And I will be back in the future with a different topic, but I hope that these things have been helpful. Again, the purpose of some of my psychoeducational videos is definitely not to replace therapy, because therapy is a healing relationship, because it has to do with you being vulnerable in front of another human being. It is radically different. It's not just about knowledge. Interpersonal therapy is definitely not just about what I'm doing here, which is psychoeducation. So just know the difference. A lot of the healing part of therapy is that you're vulnerable in front of someone else and they accept you and they're honest with you back, and it's a safe place to share. And that in and of itself is very healing for a lot of people, right? So, but the psychoeducation part is just kind of fun for me to get on and share with people, because I do have 20 plus years of therapy stuff and therapy experience, and I like to share different themes of what I've seen. So I will hop on in the future and share something else, another new topic, and I will see you then. Hope this video finds you happy and healthy, and you have a good night.